The man we are going to talk about today has gone by many names. Rapapas, Pacho, or H7. Whatever you may call him, you can't take away from the fact that there is no other like Pancho Herrera. Don't let this fashion sense fool you. Herrera led the Cali Cartel like no other kingpin before him in the 1980s and early 1990s, helping to transform it into one of the world's most powerful drug trafficking organizations. Join us as we look at the untold story of Pancho Herrera. Francisco Helmer Herrera was born in the Colombian city of Palmyra in 1951. His early life remains largely a mystery. It is rumored that Herrera was actually the unrecognized son of Benjamin Herrera Zuleta, who was the Black Pope of Coke. He moved to New York City after completing high school to study technical maintenance and gained some work experience by doing repairs at home. He was eventually able to find a job as a jeweler, before realizing that he could make way more money by selling cocaine. Herrera was arrested in 1975 by the NYPD on charges of selling a minor amount of cocaine. He would be arrested on the same charges 4 years later, but he was let go without major consequences both times. Believe it or not, one of the reasons behind the start of the Cali Cartel was actually the United States DEA. Back in the 70s, the US wasn't on great terms with communist states like China, Vietnam, and Myanmar. But what does that have to do with a drug cartel? Well, you see, these countries were big distributors of opium in the United States. The DEA had all their focus on cracking down on the opium trade. In the early 70s, the DEA openly announced that they had no intention to slow down the Colombian cocaine trade anytime soon. They said they would rather invest time and resources towards stopping the spread of heroin. Back then, the common consensus within the US government was that cocaine isn't actually addictive. Well, word got to Colombia, and 2 of the 3 founding members of the Cali Cartel saw an opening. The Orejuela brothers knew that the time was right to make a move into the US. They knew that the doors were wide open with no guards protecting the treasure inside. But they still needed a man who knew the scope of the land to break into the American coke trade, which was mostly controlled by the Italian mafia at the time. This is when Pacho Herrera would come into the picture. Because of his experience from dealing in New York and natural smarts, the brothers quickly roped Herrera into their venture. Herrera quickly rose up the ranks and became a prominent role in the drug trade. Herrera began smuggling massive volumes of cocaine from Colombia into New York using the cartel's resources and his own connections in the United States. He would become the face of the cartel in the United States. Pancho was the main person who oversaw distribution. The cartel's business would reach all-time highs under Pacho Herrera's oversight. Despite his sexual work, Pancho was deeply respected by his peers. No one questioned his leadership. He was one of the favorites among the members of the Cali Cartel. Pancho played a major role in expanding the cartel's business. It was his brains that allowed their business to spread all over the Americas and Europe. Pacho was the main person who oversaw distribution as the business grew. The cartel needed someone who could manage dozens of American cities with them. Pancho was the obvious pick. Pancho would establish his first formal distribution out of New York City. He was a channel of multiple networks that were connected to different supply chains. This would trick the authorities into thinking that each distributor was working independently, making the operation appear small and keeping the heat off the cartel. Even if one network did get taken down, there was no way to connect it to the cartel. Herrera quickly diversified the cartel's business with the money he made. He came up with another incredibly efficient system. He built processing facilities in the distant jungles of Peru and Bolivia, where workers cooked the cocaine, which he sold in the United States and Europe. To protect his manufacturing plants in the isolated areas, Pancho forged relationships with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, and the feared guerrilla group 19th of April movement. This whole system made it easier to evade authorities. And soon enough, Pacho Herrera had one of the highest ranks in the Cali Cartel's leadership. But the cartel was about to meet their match in the form of one of the world's most powerful drug rings to ever exist. Two low-level cocaine dealers got into a heated fight in the late 1980s over a woman they were both interested in. Several people were killed in a gun battle that occurred. The shooter went to Pancho and his cartel for protection. This would be the fuel that would ignite one of the worst drug wars the world has ever seen. After all, the man he had just killed was a pal of Pablo Escobar, one of the world's most dangerous drug lords. When Escobar demanded the head of the shooter, Herrera refused. The Cali and Medellin cartels were involved in a full-fledged war by 1990. Escobar's apartment complex in Colombia was destroyed by an explosion in 1988. The attack had Herrera written all over it. As a result, in 1990, Escobar had a group of assassins disguised as cops open fire on a crowd in which Herrera was seated while watching a soccer match. They slaughtered 18 individuals, but Herrera was lucky enough to come out of this unharmed. But in 1991, Herrera's luck seems to have run out when he was assaulted at a resort by a group of gunmen, who killed several people and left Pancho seriously injured. Just when it seemed like this war wouldn't end until Herrera or Escobar had their head on each other's tables, something amazing happened. The cartels realized that they had a common enemy, which was the Colombian government. After coming to terms, the cartels used a string of high-profile killings to ensure the government to change the constitution, making extradition to the U.S. illegal. With Escobar dead, the Medellin cartel left in shambles, and no one to challenge him, Herrera was left alone to rule the drug trade. The Cali cartel had a monopoly on drug distribution, supplying 80% of the world's cocaine at one point. By 1993, the cartel was pulling in an annual revenue of $8 billion. Herrera's blood, sweat, and tears had paid off. His cartel was at the top of the game. He loved football ever since he was a little boy, and with more money than he could ever spend, Herrera had a number of soccer fields built for his own personal use. He lived in his own 14-story building that came with everything from a home office to a 24-hour surveillance security system. Pacho Herrera surrendered himself to Colombian police forces in 1996, when the crackdown on the illegal Colombian cocaine trade got too heated, following the successful assassination of Pablo Escobar by Colombian police. We've already established that Pancho was a smart man. He wouldn't just give up his empire for nothing. Herrera knew that the clock was ticking, which is why as soon as he got the chance, he struck a deal with the authorities and turned himself in. But all of it was for nothing. Like most men in his line of work, Pancho didn't die peacefully. After evading several assassination attempts and establishing one of the most successful drug networks in the world, the Colombian kingpin died in an unceremonious fashion. He was killed on the prison's soccer field while incarcerated at Palmyra Jail, east of Cali. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think of the amazing life of Pancho Herrera? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.